In recent months, global IQ rankings have once again resurfaced in public discourse, often framed as neutral, objective measurements of national or racial intelligence. High-profile figures, including Elon Musk, have amplified these claims.
Elon seems to really like this account. They've gone by a few names on the platform, but they share extremely racist content that argues that black people are innately intellectually inferior beings. We actually settled this debate generations ago, but Elon Musk is helping to bring it back.
Presenting IQ data as if it were a settled science rather than a deeply contested, methodologically fragile construct. This framing is misleading. This video is not going to argue that IQ tests are meaningless at an individual level. Rather, it demonstrates why using IQ, especially so-called national IQ data, as a definitive measure of intelligence across populations is scientifically unsound, methodologically flawed, and socially irresponsible. A common defense of global IQ comparisons is that many tests, such as Raven's progressive matrices, are non-verbal and therefore culturally neutral. This assumption is just false. Non-verbal does not mean culture-free. These tests still require familiarity with abstract symbol manipulation, two-dimensional visual conventions, speeded test-taking strategies, and formal exam-style problem-solving. All of these are culturally learned behaviors, disproportionately reinforced in Western and Western-derived educational systems. Populations need to be conditioned to learn like this. Consider for a moment with me twins separated at birth. One is taken to a traditional middle to upper class Western household. The other one is taken to a completely rural village in Africa. The one in the middle class Western household learns through all of the traditional developmental tools that are used in Western households today. Sorting bricks, blocks, alphabets, letters, drawing aids, shape recognition, colouring books, mathematical sums, all of the traditional tools that are used to help children to develop into adulthood in Western environments. Now, the child that was taken to the rural agricultural / pastoral village in Africa doesn't learn those things, but still is developed well as a child. Instead, she learns to feed the chickens, she learns how to milk the cows, she learns how to feed the goats, she learns how to collect grain, she learns how to plant seeds, she learns how to recognize different plants, etc., etc. Now, if you bring those two children back at the age of 6 and you give them both a non-verbal reasoning examination, who do you think is going to score higher? Well, I'll make this very easy for you. The child who was born into the Western family is going to score higher. Does that mean that that child is smarter than the child that ended up in rural Africa? The reason I know that they'll score higher is because I'm a qualified teacher. Not only that, I have QTS standard over here in the UK, and one of the things I've done is tutoring, and all kids who have practice in non-verbal reasoning exams improve their score over time. Not some, all. That means in spite of these alleged exams being objective measurements of their cognitive ability, they actually reflect learning how to perform in a certain examination style. Let's go back to our twins. Which one of those two twins would you say is the most intelligent based on the way that they were raised? Now, I know some of you are going to go straight to the one who was raised in the Western household because they know how to do maths and they know how to work with letters and shapes and this, that and the other. Let me give you another scenario. Imagine those two children were brought back together and they were separated from their parents for 24 hours and perhaps left outside. Which out of those two twins do you feel would have a greater possibility of surviving the night? Which one do you think would be more capable at defending themselves, feeding themselves, keeping themselves in shelter? Now, since I've asked you that question, let me ask you again, which of these two twins is more intelligent? This is not a trick question. Really, it's a rhetorical one because neither of them are smarter. They're both simply raised in different environments that have appealed to different types of intelligence that are required. There has been no successful attempt to craft a test that truly measures objective human intelligence, because it really doesn't exist. So much of what we classify as intelligence is environmental. Populations need to be conditioned to learn like this. Decades of research on the Flynn effect, which is the steady rise of IQ scores across generations, demonstrates that IQ performance is highly sensitive to environmental conditions, including schooling style, nutrition, health, and exposure to abstract reasoning tasks. Just consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That should really tell you everything that you need to know about someone's ability to perform. It begins with your physiological needs and moves on to your social and safety needs, and then your group needs, and then your ego needs. And only once these have been fulfilled does one really have the ability to improve their intellectual performance. This is just a basic human condition. Those who are consistently struggling with their physiological, safety, food and warmth needs are not going to be able to perform as well as those who have those fulfilled on a daily basis. If intelligence were primarily fixed and biological, such dramatic intergenerational shifts would not be possible. Crucially, the largest Flynn gains appear on the most abstract test items, suggesting that IQ tests partially measure how well individuals are trained to think in the way the test demands, not raw cognitive potential. Consider for a moment the performance of Far East Asian groups who outperform modern Europeans in spite of being economically less advantaged. What could contribute to this? Well, consider their regimented learning styles and their wholesale adoption of the Western model of education. These things, compounded with an already much more disciplined and respectful society, means they had all the ingredients to perform well in these exams, because that's what IQ tests are. They are examinations. This directly undermines the claim that cross-cultural IQ comparisons capture innate intelligence rather than culturally conditioned performance. Even if IQ tests were perfectly culture neutral, which they are not, the way national IQ data is constructed renders them largely unusable. Most so-called national IQ estimates are based on the works of Richard Lynn's racially propagated work, and these in themselves were based on small, non-representative samples often drawn from single regions, schools or cities, sometimes even refugee camps. They rely on outdated cohorts, sometimes decades old. They use tests administered in non-native languages. In other words, they didn't understand what they were reading, and they exclude rural populations entirely. A major peer-reviewed critique led by one Yelt Wickerts demonstrated that selective inclusion and exclusion of African datasets dramatically shifted estimated national means, indicating that the results are highly sensitive to researcher discretion and not